In this video, we will be discussing two other types of fraction decimal percent conversions. So let's start with percents to decimals. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to find the decimal point in the number, and you're going to move it 2 spaces to the left. Now, last class, we turned decimals into percentages and you move towards where the percent sign is. But in this case, you're going to go 2 away from where the percent sign is, because you don't want to be a percent anymore, so you're going to run away from it as fast as you can. So if we look at the two examples, we have 28%, and the decimal is not written here, but the 28 is a whole number, so we're going to put the decimal point right there, behind the whole number. And then we're going to move 2 spaces away from the from the percent sign. So the decimal point is now here. So our final answer for the decimal is 0.28, or 28 hundredths. And we're going to do the same thing for the next one. My decimal point is written for me, and I'm going to go 2 spaces away from where it already is. Now, a big mistake that a lot of students will do is they'll say, oh, well, the decimal is always right in front of the percent sign. It is if it's a whole number, but if it's already written in the number, you just move the decimal point from where it is, and then you get rid of the percent sign. So in this case, I'm going to fill that in with a 0. So I'm left with 0 point, because you always have to put a leading 0, 0, 0, 7. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's look at number 1. I'm going to rewrite it just so I have a little bit more space to move the decimal point around. This is a whole number of 6, so the decimal is here. I'm going to move it 2 spaces to the left, away from where the percent sign is. Fill the empty space in with a 0, and make sure you always add a leading 0. So my answer is 0.06 as my final answer. So go ahead. What I would like for you to do is pause the video, and I want you to do 2 through 12 on your own. When you're ready, unpause the video. And here are your answers for number 2 through 12. And if you have a question on any of them, make sure that you go to one of your teachers and you ask, because we are here to support you. So if you look down below, this is just like we did last class, but please remember you need to change everything into a decimal. So in the first one, you have a decimal, but the first one that's here, this 40%, is not a decimal. So let's turn 40% into a decimal. I'm going to move my decimal point 2 places, and if you liked last time how I made that bar where my new decimal point should go, do that instead of just drawing an arrowhead. So I'm left with 0.4, and I can add the 0 behind. Now, I recommend adding the 0 because this one goes out to the hundredths place, so my one that I'm changing should also go out to the hundredths place, so you can compare them. So if I look at this, this one's 40 and this one is 68, so my inequality sign will go that way. So what I'd like for you to do is pause, and I want you to try 14 and 15 on your own. And here are your answers for number 14 and number 15. Okay, so if we look at the next page, we're going to talk about place value. So we have the decimal point that always shows up in our numbers typically, and anything in front of the decimal point, that would be your ones place, your tens place, your hundreds place. Then behind the decimal point is your tenths, your hundredths, your thousandths. And the way I remember this is I always put a little 1 under where the ones place is, skip over where the decimal point is, and then put zeros under everything else that follows. So you can see this here, the 1 in the first 0 is the tenths. The 1 in the second 0 is the hundredths. The 1 in the third 0 is the thousandths. So if we look at this example, the 7 is in the blank place. Well, it's right in front of the decimal point. I can put a 1 under it. That is the ones place. For this one, the 2 is in the, and we're going to talk about this 2 right here, I'm sorry. There's 2 of them in there. The 2, if I don't know where that is, I can put a 1 under the ones place and then add zeros to follow. So the 2 is in the hundredths place. because it's behind the decimal. Number 3, the 5, it's behind the decimal point, so I can put my little cheater trick here, fill in the 1 where the 1's place is and zeros underneath the rest. And that 5 is going to be in the thousandths. So I want you to pause and I want you to try number 4 on your own. So the 8 is in the tenths place because it's the first place after the decimal point. Now, if we look down below, we're going to talk about how to convert decimals into fractions. So let's fill in all these blanks. Okay, so there's all your words that you can fill in really quick. If you need to pause to get in all those words, pause here, write them all down, and then you can unpause and listen to my instructions. So the first thing you're going to do is place any number in front of the decimal point as the whole number. So an example of that would be 2.5. And the number in front of the decimal, the 2, is the whole number. So that's going to become the whole number of my fraction. Then you take any numbers to the right of the decimal point. So that would be this 5, or anything that's behind it, and place them in the numerator. So the 5 becomes the numerator. So I have 2, technically point, and then 5. Then the place value of the numbers after the decimal point become the denominator. So the place value of the 5, or any other numbers that follow, so that 5, which is the last number, is in the tenths place, so it would be a denominator of 10. And then the last thing that you need to do is simplify the fraction. So 5/10, I can divide that by 5, and I'm left with 2 and 1/2 as my final answer. So if we look at the next 2 examples, let's look at number 1. The whole number is 1, so that will say the whole number of my fraction. The stuff that follows is 48. That becomes the numerator. So you can see 1, technically 0.48, shows up right there. Now I need to find the place value. Here's the ones place, the tenths, and the hundredths. So the 48 is in the hundredths place. And then the last thing that you need to do is simplify. So in order to simplify this, we can divide it by 2 because they're even. And you could divide by something bigger if you can. So you get 1 and then 24 over 50. And then those are both even again. So you're going to divide by 2 again. And you get 1 and 12 over 25. And that is done there. And don't forget, the whole number has to follow along with the rest of it. If it's easier for you, you could always draw the arrow like we were doing before, put the 1 and put the fraction, simplify the fraction, and then bring over 12 over 25. Both ways work. All right, so let's look at number 2. There's no whole number, so I don't need a whole number in this one. The numerator is 9, because that's what's following the decimal point. And then the place value of this is the 10, because the 9 is in the tenths place. So that one is just 9/10, and it doesn't simplify, so you're done with that one. All right, so I have one for you to turn the page. And I want you to look at these problems at the top of page 11. So it says convert the following decimals into fractions. And let's do one more example together, and then I'm going to have you try some on your own. I'm going to do number 4. So the whole number for this one is a 3. So I'm going to put a 3 there and put a fraction bar. Then I'm going to bring this piece over here. I'm going to bring this over into a fraction. 9, and the place value of the 9 is the thousandths place. 9 thousandths does not simplify. So the final answer is 3 and 9 thousandths. So that's your answer there. Now, if you liked before how I put the 3 and then put the fraction bar beside it and then dealt with the decimal piece and then simplified, you can do it that way too. Whatever works best for you. If you're still stuck, make sure you ask your teacher for help. We are here to support you. So go ahead, pause the video. I want you to do 3 through 10 on your own. And here are your answers for those practice problems. So if you scroll down on that page, I just want to give you one example. When you're completing tables like this, it's asking you to turn whatever you're given into the new piece. So if you look at this one, the decimal is 0.04. You're going to turn that into a fraction with the place value. So it becomes 4 over 100. Simplify. You can divide by 4 and you get 1 over 25. And then you'll turn it into a percentage, move the decimal 2 places over, and you get 4%. Now you'll turn this fraction into a decimal and a percent. You'll turn this percent into a decimal and then a fraction, and you just kind of bebop back and forth.